With a whirlwind first episode, Bleach is back and it's time to start the invasion of the Soul Society to see which Soul Reapers are about to meet their maker. If you haven't seen the latest episode of Bleach the 1000-Year Blood War as yet, spoilers alert. The following episode is titled Peace from the Shadows and it adapted chapters 547 to 551 where the Soul Society has vanished and it's time to kick some ass. The Gote 13 now engage in an all-out deathmatch. So let's see what's been adapted and what's been invaded. The episode starts out with an anime exclusive scene of Jugo holding a meeting with the other Stern Ritters. Now, funny enough, the conversation they have here isn't an anime exclusive. You see, it does appear in chapter 550 when Askin would say the same thing to Captain Myuri. He also says here, exterminate the enemy instantly, which in the manga would only show up after he says it to the Captain Commander, which in this episode, he does say it twice. We do get a wonderful panning shot showing all the Stern Ritters, kind of reminiscent of the Espada meeting with Aizen years ago. This is where the episode would begin. So when the episode begins, we resume outside the Soul Society. This would be chapter 547, titled Peace from Shadow, which doesn't actually begin here. It begins with Ichigo seeming like he's getting ready to head out to the battle. And since we didn't see that, I'll count these as skipped, which is about 4 panels. This does include an amazing, beautiful spread in the manga, which, man, you can really feel the impact of this one. But it seems Ukitake is outside the Soul Society. This time, the captain will join the fight. But the disappearance of the Soul Society would shock the Captain Commander as he set some traps in the Soul Society, but now they're all rendered useless. Now this episode does what the last episode did with skipping around a lot, as now we get to His Majesty hearing the explanation of the technique, but the manga would only start to explain after we see the reaction of the research department. It seems the Quincy used Reishi to hide within the Soul Society. Well, more specifically, within the shadows in the Soul Society, and they formed their kingdom right under the Shinigami's noses, which, if you ask me, is pretty amazing. After this explanation, the research and development department would start to go crazy and try to understand what happened. But unlike the manga, we skip out a bunch of panels, like a whole lot. Just from these couple scenes, I count 26 panels, and holy mother of God, those panels are a lot, but they would include another shot of the invasion of the Soul Society, Akon trying to figure out what happened right before Askin would start talking. After that, the manga and the anime would pretty much sync up for the rest of the chapter, so I'll cover it. Askin would also add to His Majesty's speech by saying they had many years to build up their army, and since they can manipulate Reishi, this was the perfect place to do it. That's why they could always catch the Shinigami off guard like last time and now this time. Jugo now heads to the Captain Commander. It's time to behead the new commander and land a crippling blow to the Soul Society once more. And my heart can't take another commander's death, so please Bleach, please, don't kill off one of my favorite captains. Please. Askin is now firmly in the midst of the research department, but wouldn't you know it, someone unexpected shows up. It's Captain Myuri, and he's dressed weird as fuck, looking like a sunflower. What is this crazy man up to now? But as he suspected, they were hidden in the shadows, so he's modified his lab to not have any shadows in it. And now he will try to square off with Askin. But outside, the battle has already started. Bazz-B, like he did before, would be taking down some fodder Shinigami in a blaze of glory. But here to protect them is Captain Hitsugaya. Nice! A flame user versus an ice user. Let's see how this one goes. This is where the chapter would end, although throughout all that, only one panel was skipped here. Chapter 548, titled Thin Ice, begins with Mauricio not being able to believe his eyes that the Serete has vanished. But the anime would actually continue with the scene with Bazz-B and Toshiro, which is actually after the Mauricio scene. Bazz-B isn't impressed at a captain that's lost his Bankai. Either way, Bazz would not be turning down the heat, so he blazes on and they clash. Ice versus fire. And this is where we switch over to Soifan's lieutenant. And guys, I'm really having a struggle pronouncing his name, whether it be his first name or his last name. So I'll try to stay away from it as best as possible because man, I messed this up like 5,000 times trying to say this. The Serete vanishing is more than he can handle and he's terrified, but behind him is his little sister. She lets him know that she's scared and my dude, what the hell is going on here? The only reason the writer would have included her in this is either she's going to be hurt very badly or she'll die. And damn, I don't want to see any kids get killed. Or maybe I do. Anyways, I won't count any of these panels that are missing from their interaction here because I'm biased, so live with it. He lets her know that she doesn't need to cry and he will go and fight to protect the Soul Society. But before he could head out, a Stern Ritter finds them. And oh my god, it's BG9. the same one that stole Soifon's Bankai. So you know her lieutenant is going to be pissed. In the manga, this is where we would get the next part to Bazz-B's fight. But in the anime, we take stock and check with our favorite Quincy, Ishida, and this would be the midpoint of the episode. When we resume the episode, we get the next part of Bazz-B and Toshiro's fight. It's a little hard to explain the differences in the anime as compared to the manga, so what I'll do is I'll keep powering through and gloss over that. Matsumoto now takes the chance to tell the other Shinigami to clear the area. In the manga, one of these guys notices that the captain's ice is super thin, and it was a miracle that it protected them from the flame. But these 4 panels were skipped, as Bazz-B would literally say the same thing in a panel down, so it makes no sense to repeat this, right? The captain has been nerfed. Even Bazz-B notices and starts swirling his flames a bit more. Matsumoto rejoins the captain's side. She's kinda happy that he lost his Bankai, so she can help him out by releasing her own Zanpakuto. By mixing with the ice, the dust of Haineku makes it even more stronger and packs it all together. Surprisingly, it blocks the fire. Seems Bazz-B can't melt this ice as easily. Now, when the ice is packed like this, multi-layered, and combined with Matsumoto's sword ability, it gives it kind of an ice vacuum effect. This pisses off Bazz-B even more and he turns up the heat. But this doesn't affect Toshiro as he's cool as a cucumber. And then he launches his attack which hits Bazz-B square in the chest. This is where the chapter would end. There were a few panels here that were depicted a little bit differently as how the manga portrayed it. But I didn't count those panels as the dialogue would cross over with the anime. So pretty much the same thing would happen, or just useless close-up shots that wouldn't have made sense in the anime, but regardless they would have still been there. It doesn't change the final panel count at the end later. In the anime, we would get an extension of this scene, showing Bazz-B getting hit by ice and Matsumoto celebrating their win. Now, this is where the anime goes off the rails and skips an entire chapter or 2, and we jump over to chapter 551, titled The Burnt Offerings. It begins with Jugo having a little chat with the Captain Commander. A lot of those little chats happening all over the place. Seems Nanao has developed a barrier to keep Jugo away from the Captain Commander. Nanao is a talented Kido user, and she created this one specifically to block Quincy's power. During their exchange, we would skip these 2 panels. One where Jugo is questioning what the barrier is doing to his powers, and the next one where the Captain Commander lets off a quick quip. Let's skip on back to chapter 549, titled Stormbringer, on page 2, of course. Anyone else is getting sick of this skipping around? I know I am. But anyways, Soifon's lieutenant is getting beat half to death. We do have a few notable changes from the manga here, and I'll highlight them. In the manga, he just got slapped around. No blood was drawn. But in the anime, he gets a shoulder wound, and his sister would run to his aid. But she wouldn't be there in the manga. Seems the Stern Ritter wants to know where Soifon is, so he's giving this guy a good slapping around. But Soifon's lieutenant really doesn't know where his captain is. But the Stern Ritter isn't listening, so he did something so reprehensible, I can barely put it in words, but I'll do my best. So the manga would have things a little bit differently. In a flash, he impaled the lieutenant's sister right through the gut, and oh my god, I knew this would happen, and I changed my mind. I don't want to see this. Thank god the anime chose to go a different route. Instead of that, they show the lieutenant protecting his sister and getting impaled, throwing his body in the way. And then this guy would pop out a freaking Gatling gun. What is it with shonen characters popping out guns everywhere? But again, the manga would have things a little bit differently here. The Stern Ritter tells him that the rest of his family would die in the same way, but then he gets a huge slap in his face. The lieutenant isn't having any of it. This isn't enough to get the Stern Ritter to stop, so he relentlessly injures the lieutenant further. But he isn't giving up. He starts attacking again, and I can feel his pain. His sister is there and there's nothing he can do to help her. And then my dude whips out a gun, which would mean we would skip a whopping 22 panels from this scene alone. But funny enough, this doesn't stop here, as we do skip the first 6 panels of this chapter as well. Those panels would include, with the defeat of Bazz-B, Toshiro is feeling confident, and my dude, I have a huge issue with this reaction. Why are they celebrating? They aren't even sure if the enemy is really dead, so why turn your back and let your guard down? You are a captain after all. You are definitely going to regret this. Anyways, back to the current event. As he fires the gun, it would get a makeover from Captain Soifon. She rips it off. He didn't even know what hit him. She literally is the master of stealth, so how could he? She's taken a new form, which baffles him. But we've seen this before. It's the Flash Cry. She coats her body in Kido energy, and the force is to be reckoned with. Unlike Yurichi, whose Shunko is lightning based, Soifon's Shunko is wind based, and she coats her body in this vortex. This is where she thanks the stern ritter and gives him a slap across the face. My dude was sent flying like a freaking ragdoll, and I was hyped as hell. Now we make another huge skip to chapter 550 titled Blazing Bullets. It begins with Askin, or what we like to call him, Walmart Eisen, having a bit of talk with Captain Myuri. Askin refuses to fight because he thinks that it'll take too long for the captain to die, so he leaves, but the captain doesn't stop him from leaving, which is very strange for Askin. Seems Myuri saw through this little ploy. Askin wanted the captain to attack. Now Myuri senses Soifan's attack, but Askin seems to have predicted it. And this is what the first sequence in the anime was alluding to, and Askin would repeat those same sentiments. This is where he would leave the captain with his thoughts, and we move over to Toshiro for the final pages of chapter 549. Even Toshiro feels the big bang. Matsumoto asks the captain if they should help out the others to fight, but wouldn't you know it, Bazz-B is still alive, and wow, what a shocker. He's still getting warmed up. Once he breaks out of the ice, we make another skip over to chapter 550. Bazz breaks out of the ice. They thought he was impaled by Toshiro's ice, but it seems that only his cape was affected, and thus we skip these panels. In the manga, this is where Soifan would have been shown fighting, but we skip over that for now and continue with Bazz-B, as thus we would skip these 10 panels, where he explains that his flames are just as strong as the previous captain commander, and he demonstrates his ability. Toshiro retaliates and sends out a wall of ice, but this means nothing to Bazz-B. He blocks it with one hand in his pocket like it was nothing. He uses his burning finger technique to impale the captain through the chest, and oh my god, that's what an impalement looks like. This is where the chapter would actually end. But we're really not finished, as the anime hasn't adapted all of the panels as yet, so let's continue to look at those. With that said, we get back to BG9 and Soifan's fight. He is making his way out of her earlier attack. This would also be the end of chapter 549, but we continue on in chapter 550 with the final few pages. Now the reason it's skipping around so much is because the fight between Bazz-B and Toshiro, BG9 and Soifan were interwoven together within the manga to go back and forth over and over, but in the anime it seems to have progressed a little bit more nicely, with the fights playing out longer than in the manga. So what happens is that the anime went ahead and stitched together fights that would have taken us to multiple scenes into one cohesive fight, interwoven with some speeches from others like the research department, Yuha, and even the captain commander. BG9 attacks Soifan with his sphere, or whatever you may call it. They are so strong they can destroy buildings, but Soifan counters. And is BG9 a robot? We would of course skip that panel where Soifan asks that question, but holy crap baskets, look at him now, he looks really epic. He taunts Soifan by saying that she is still not strong enough, and he doesn't need to use her bankai to kill her. He launches this attack which blows away the captain, and then he impales her on her hand. He seems to have analyzed all her techniques already, and this means nothing to him. When he blasts her away, this would be the end of chapter 550. This is where we would switch over to Jugo, who asks if the technique that Nanao used can be taught to the other captains, and that if they would have done so, it would have allowed their captain to die in a more significant way. Toshiro is running for his life, but Bazz-B isn't letting up, slicing through the captain's eyes as if it was nothing. Then Toshiro uses some mist to hide his presence, but Bazz-B uses his burning stop to swish it away, in which case Toshiro would stand and face Bazz-B and then activates a trap. But then again, he's underestimating Bazz-B, who would make short work of this trap, using 2 fingers to blast it and Toshiro away, slashing him across his chest, breaking his sword, and finally defeating the captain, who falls to the ground. We do skip these 2 panels, but then another stern ritter would interfere, and wouldn't you know it, it's the same one that stole Toshiro's bankai. He's here to finish the captain off. This is where the research and development team would say that 2 spiritual pressures have gone missing, in which case they've identified it as Captain Hitsugaya and Soifan. But then Myuri would get a call from his previous master, Urahara, who's saying that he's finally perfected a way to get the bankai back. This is where the chapter would end and the outro of the episode would begin to play out. Seems we're almost at the end of the episode. The actual end of the episode would come after the outro, when we see Ichigo still walking down this hall. He's been walking down it for like 2 episodes. It seems that the further he walks, the heavier his body gets, which is a part of his training. This is where the Squad Zero captain would narrate over Ichigo's training. Bro, I thought we were past all this skipping around bullshit, but it seems that we're back to it after the first episode. However, it does make the episode much more cinematic as opposed to its manga's chaotic pace of trying to weave everything together, so it was a pretty great episode. I was expecting Bazz-B to be a bit more epic and more confident as the manga portrayed him, but it's fine for now. This episode gets a solid 7 out of 10, so let's get to the numbers. Bleach, the 1000-Year Blood War episode 15, Peace from Shadows, covered 5 manga chapters. Each chapter would have an average of 18 pages, all of those would add up to 90. Each of these pages would have an average of 81 panels, adding up to 405, with 84 of those panels being unique or not adapted, which means only 321 panels were adapted, meaning across all 5 chapters, 79.26% were covered. A little more was adapted in this episode than the last one. We do have a 10.31% increase in the amount of panels adapted, which is pretty cool. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts on this episode and leave me a like on your way out. If you haven't subscribed as yet, please do, it really helps out the channel. I've been your host Kyle. Thanks again for joining V Nation. Peace out and stay safe out there.